Hey there. Welcome to episode number 65 of Business Unusual. Today we're going to be talking about finding your networking groove. I know so many different people are out there struggling with the question of why network now? And you may be emerging from lockdown, maybe you're not. Maybe you're still in a position of you just really can't get out and do much yet. Well, I'm going to talk to you today about why you want to network, whether it's virtual, and we still need to be doing a lot of that, or whether it's in real life. First thing that I want you to think about with your networking is we're all looking for that new normal. And I think you also need to be aware of the fact that everybody right now is craving connection. We want the opportunity to get back out and expand relationships and get back into some of these regular habits. And we all need to be thinking about it from more than a social perspective. Also, we need to identify and build new relationships that can help us grow our businesses. So if you think about what networking means to you right now, the first thing that you have to just really be clear about is what is your reason for networking. So what I'd like for you to do is just take a few minutes in the comments and give me your biggest reasons for networking. And you're looking at the YouTube recording right now, so I would encourage you to comment there. Share with me what your biggest reason is behind networking now. And is it because you were looking for the social connection and maybe you just need that opportunity to connect with like-minded professionals that are going to energize you? Or maybe you do need to expand and reach a new market. You've recognized that networking and attending trade shows or even online trade shows or town hall meetings or Zoom meetings may be a good way for you to find a few other professionals that would be good referral relationships for you, or maybe good prospects. So whatever your reason is, I want you to comment in the questions and just talk to me or in the comments and just talk to me and let me know kind of where you're at and what your reason is behind doing it. Because when you think about networking now, I don't know if you're like this great big class of population out there that's called the introverts. It may be a little bit of a stretch for you. And if you've been out of the habit of networking for a bit, you may need to be learning new habits. Or maybe you've discovered that you're that group that's called the ambiverts. And I absolutely loved learning more about them. I think there was a book called Quiet that talked about the ambiverts and how we can take over the world. And an ambivert, according to how it was explained, was someone that gets their energy not from people, but more from going internally and thinking and doing quiet things like reading or spending time in contemplation. So if you're one of the, and then you can look like an extrovert and people think you're an extrovert because you can adapt so well. But it may not be where you find your most enjoyment, and it may drain you a bit. So I find that there are a ton of us that fit into that category. So I can look like an extrovert. I can go out in front of a group of people. I can present on a stage. And it looks like I'm an extrovert, but I got to go home and read a book or work in my garden or just chill and hang out with a horse, because that really is something where I find my energy. So that's the question that you have to ask, is where do you find your energy also? Because it may be through networking, and you may need to surround yourself with other people in order to find that energy and enthusiasm and passion for what you're doing again, and share that passion with others. Or maybe you need to go out and add to others' energy and then come back and recharge and find your own. But whatever it is, you need to be super clear about it. And also recognize that we are having to relearn these habits when we fell off the networking wagon. Now recognize that right now, networking has so many amazing opportunities available for us because of the tools just like I'm using right now. using YouTube and Zoom and GoToMeeting and all these virtual platforms and Facebook Lives and LinkedIn recordings. There's so many different things we can do to get back out there and stretch our legs. But first thing that I want to talk about is, okay, so now that we are getting back out and networking, should we go out back to the habit of having a lot more coffee meetings? And I like to spend, we had some benefits that came out of this, and I'd like for us to continue to leverage some of those, because I know that through the pandemic, I learned to be a lot better steward of my time. And I recognized that my initial getting acquainted meetings could happen with a lot less time spent in travel. And then I also found I was a lot more productive with those networking meetings, because what I realized is that a typical coffee meeting was going to last an hour to an hour and a half, just because we are social creatures and we do like to talk to people and catch up on other things that are not related to our agenda for meeting originally. So what I find is that it's a lot more productive if I spend an initial 15 to 20 minute getting acquainted conversation on the phone or via a Zoom platform or GoToMeeting platform, and then actually schedule a face-to-face once we have discovered, yes, there's something here that we can either collaborate on, or potentially they're a prospect for me, or a resource that I need to engage in my own business. So I think that that's one of my first tips that I want to share with you, besides the we need to be networking, is I want you to be sharing how you can leverage these platforms for that initial conversation. The other thing that I want to talk about for just a minute are all of the different avenues that we can network, and recognize that there is a multi-stage process to your networking. So for example, you connect with somebody on a social platform, and my recommendation is to have that getting acquainted conversation that there's really no agenda with, aside from, I just want to get to know you and I want to learn more about what you do, who you serve, and how we may be able to collaborate, and I can bring value either via my connections or otherwise. The other thing that we do need to do is recognize that our best networking is probably not going to take place in a group of professionals that are all like us. And if you are going to networking breakfasts that are made up of a whole lot of people that are trying to sell to you, and you're trying to sell to them, that may not be the right forum for you to be networking in. So I find right now that the best results are coming from more the one-to-one conversations and the collaboration where you can perhaps provide value to someone else's audience and bring them resources. And then you also identify professionals that can bring value to your resources, much like I do with my weekly webinar, where, at least twice a month, I'm featuring additional speakers that I'm learning from, and I think you would enjoy learning from as well. The other avenue we have for networking that I don't want us to abandon are the town halls and the webinar formats, because those are phenomenal opportunities for you to connect, and then recognize that during those events, there are so many opportunities to connect with amazing people, but you need to really be in the event. More on that in just a minute. So my advice when you actually start networking and you're getting back out there, my recommendation is that you really be prepared for that event. And one of the ways you can do that is through connecting with the event hosts and getting an idea of who's on the registration list. And hopefully that's someone that you have formed a relationship with already. And whoever it is that invites you, if they're a member of that event and have the opportunity to review the guest list in advance, it's great if you can talk through and identify who on that list you would like to meet and why you would like to meet them. And then take a few moments and actually go and review LinkedIn profiles and look at what conversations they're having, similar to Monty's advice that he's given us in other episodes. of really understand what questions they're asking, how they're engaging on the platform, what resources are they connecting with, what recommendations do they have from clients that are shared. All of that gives you amazing insight. And look for the influencers to connect with, because it's absolutely fantastic to connect with a client. But if you connect with an influencer, you gain access to their audience that could be multiple clients, and it's only one person that you're going to go to coffee with. So that's one of my recommendations that I have for preparing for the event. Now, the other thing I want to shift your focus on just a little bit when you go network, if you think about it as you have to always be on or selling something at a networking event, that puts a lot of pressure on you. And that's really not a lot of fun in terms of networking. So another one of my recommendations is that you approach networking not from the perspective of looking for opportunities for you, but looking for relationships that make sense for your relationship base. So identify connections that may be good for one of your best referral partners. Or maybe it's an opportunity that one of your clients could serve or connect or find value in knowing that person. And when you go to an event, set yourself a goal of, I would like to make anywhere from 2 to 4 connections for others during this event, and perhaps find 1 to 2 that would be relevant for me. When you think about it like that, that takes a lot of the pressure off of the networking, and it allows you to just kind of step back and kind of reframe your thinking. And when you're looking to help others, it's a lot easier for you to be able to find benefit in that event, because instead of one agenda, now there's a host of people that you could potentially help. Now, the other thing that I'm going to give you just a little bit of advice on preparing for your networking is prepare your elevator pitch, or your, I don't want to call it, it's a 30-second commercial, but I'd really like for you to reframe that commercial. Instead of thinking of it as a broadcast message, think of it more as an opportunity to engage and build relationships. So with that, and we actually have another episode that was featured in Business Unusual that was done by Dan Staub. And Dan does an amazing job talking about your elevator pitch. And he shared something about leading with a headline, because now you really don't have 30 seconds. You've got anywhere from 3 to 7 to connect. So you need to think about it more like you've got a 10-second commercial to actually engage with people, just because our attention spans are so limited now because of all of the messages that are inundating us right now. So think about what that headline is. And that headline needs to be more focused around I serve. And then what you're going to do is describe that target audience and why they want to talk to you. So for example, I serve professionals who can't afford to waste 99% of their time prospecting through cold calling. They need to find the perfect prospect that needs to talk with them right now. And they'd rather be referred than have to chase that person and try to build that credibility or authority over what they do. So that's who I work with. And when you lead with a headline similar to that in a conversation, people are going to say, oh, that's interesting. How do you do that? But we don't really want to get into that yet, because really networking is not about telling your story. It's about engaging and building a relationship with someone new that you will then take into a different format or setting. So you're not really looking for an opportunity to go all in with that particular contact. What you need to think about is, how can you build value within this conversation? And what I want you to think about with building value is there are a number of different ways that you can do that. You can do that through bringing them relevant or helpful connections. You can do that through giving them advice or guidance. Or potentially you can do that through offering them services, or maybe you need to hire them. There's any number of ways that you can connect, but all of those need to be explored in the next conversation. The networking event is to open the door. Don't shove your foot in the door and be that pesky door-to-door salesman. Remember in the days of encyclopedia sales, You had that person that once they got their foot in your door, you couldn't get rid of them and you were trying to think of how you could shove them out so that you could get on with dinner. Well, that's what we need. I'm dating myself, aren't I? Here I go. So all of us boomers need to unite. Or I'm close to boomers. I'm a Gen Xer, but I feel you, boomers. So what I want you to think about is just be super clear about your agenda and recognize that the agenda needs to be about building emotional equity. And emotional equity is formed by deposits, not withdrawals. So the goal is if you have 5 to 7 minutes for that initial conversation, and that's kind of where I want you to keep it limited during an initial networking event. And in that 5 to 7 minutes, I want you to ask some pretty important questions. So if you struggle with what to say after hello in a networking event, if you're multitasking, I want you to come back to me now. If this is a challenge that you face, what I want you to do is recognize that the faster you can start asking them questions about why they attend the event, who they're looking to meet, and what a great connection looks like for them. And you answer those 3 questions, not you answer, but you get the answer to that from the person that you're connecting with. And then you find opportunities to make those valuable connections. You are going to find yourself doing incredibly well with your networking. And you're going to build that emotional equity. And then if that relationship that they're trying to connect with is valuable for you, so if you're looking for that common audience, you would schedule that next conversation. Or if they're potentially a prospect that you can serve. If they're a business leader, they're in a particular stage of growth or change within their organization that you could add value to, that's going to be someone that you want to connect with. So you're going to take these connections and then go and meet with them again. After the event, you're going to follow up. I'm going to give you a few suggestions about the follow-up here in just a minute. But before I do that, I want to share just a little bit of general advice right now that I think we all need to be aware of. And it's recognizing that we are all coming from our own place, and we all need to remember to be kind. And I don't know that we necessarily, many of the people who are listening to this recording probably don't need that reminder about being kind, but it doesn't matter what your opinion is about what's going on in the world or the pandemic or about politics or about anyone's opinion about masking or vaccinating or anything like that. Recognize that we all have our own opinion and we're all coming from our own place and our own experience. So let's just be happy. And let's be supportive and not divisive throughout the prospecting efforts that we're doing right now. And then recognize that there may be a lot of people that for whatever reason, they need to continue to be cautious, and not from the perspective of even worrying about a pandemic. But for example, I have a dad with health challenges right now that a cold can be as devastating for him, or the flu could put him in the hospital. So we just don't want to take chances. So we're taking things a little bit safer for our household because of those reasons. And I encourage you to recognize that others may be in a similar place. All right, now let's get to some tips and tricks for making the most of even virtual events. So first thing is be fully present at the event. If you are sitting in a Zoom conversation and it's a networking event, I don't want you to be surfing through Facebook and multitasking. I want you to be in the moment and paying attention to the conversation that's going on over on the side. Because in a lot of cases, you're going to find people making comments or asking questions. And if you're following that thread, you may find the opportunity to add value to that conversation. So if you're surfing, you're not going to see all that happening. So I want you to pay attention and remain fully engaged, because when those questions come up, that is an opportunity for you to potentially reach out and open a door for a conversation or a connection with that prospect. The other thing is make sure that you manage your time well. If it looks like you're going to be running over for your virtual meetings, then let the other person know, have a conversation about whether or not you might need to reschedule or meet again in order to continue the conversation. But keep on track and keep focused. with your agenda. And make sure that you don't try to bite off too much, because it's a lot easier for you to walk away from that meeting with just a couple of things that you're going to be focusing on and move forward with those, rather than trying to carry on a to-do list that is 1.5 miles long, that you are going to get discouraged when you see it and you're not going to follow through on any of it. Make sure that you practice with your meeting platform in advance. So don't wait until you're having one of those very first webinars in order to start to dive in and actually learn the platform. Get on and run through it with, if you've got any guest hosts or presenters, make sure you hop on. And we actually gave some advice on this when we talked about hosting webinars and town hall meetings. And we did an episode on that as well within Business Unusual. Now, the other thing is, prior to having, if you're going to have a virtual event where there will be just a couple of you, prepare in advance by reviewing their social profiles. Again, follow conversations, identify what they've been talking about, what some of their concerns are or challenges or things that they've been asking their network for advice on. And then that can help you with preparing your questions for that conversation so that it can be highly focused and targeted. Now, another tip for you in terms of after the networking event. So we've talked about why you network. We've talked about preparing for the event. We've talked about during the event, after hello, how to add value to the conversations. Now I'd like to wrap things up with talking about follow through. So recognize that after the event, one of the first steps you need to take is leveraging the social platforms. So connect on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever profile it will be the most relevant for what it is that you're selling. So for example, many of my professional connections are on LinkedIn, but I also have my side hustle that is raising and selling warm blood horses, as well as a lot of my clients are on Facebook. So I'm connecting on both platforms, but my conversations sound very different on each platform. So depending on where it is that the connection will be most helpful for me, that's where I'm going to go with my connection request. Most of the time it's on LinkedIn. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to also, if I have the opportunity to send them a handwritten note, I'm going to do so. It may take you a little bit of work to run down an address. So for example, you may have to go to their contact info and then go to their company website and then find a mailing address for their business in order to be able to send that handwritten thank you note. But I always like sending something that is just a little bit of a reminder of what we chatted about and let them know that I appreciated them taking time talking with me during that event. So the other thing is, I also want to add, when you send that LinkedIn connection request, don't just hit that connect. Make sure that when it gives you the option to add a personal note, you do so. And I also like to reference whatever one of our top conversation points was during that note. So we're just going to go back and reinforce why they were a great connection and why I think it would make sense for us to be included in one another's network. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to send a follow-up note, and they're probably going to receive it. And I think you should send this out within 24 hours of the event, because there are too many studies that show that the more time passes between when the initial conversation happens and when you ask someone to take action, the less chance that they will actually follow through with that. So let's take advantage of all of these opportunities and make sure that we are following up on them promptly. This is not a case of, well, maybe they'll think I'm desperate. Don't worry about it. Because really, it's not they think you're desperate, they think you're on top of it and that you want to make the most of every opportunity that's presented. So follow up with your action items. When you follow up with those recommendations or with those action items, my recommendation is that you always lead with what's in it for them. So lead with the connections that you are making for them or that emotional equity investment, and then make your ask. Or then ask for the opportunity to continue to have additional conversations. Remember, do not sell at the event. And my recommendation is don't even sell right after the event. Meet, have a conversation, explore where you can serve one another's audiences. When you approach from the referral perspective, Business may happen with that person that you're having a conversation with, but the more you add value, the more you are going to create that reciprocity factor that then makes them say, okay, if this is what they're doing for me for free and I haven't even hired them, what happens if if they're actually working for me? So, and that's one thing that I also want to remind you of and make a personal request. If you've listened to this recording for this long, you're probably finding value in this conversation. And one thing that I want to share is that think about it like this. If I'm giving away this much for free, think of what happens when you are my client and you participate in one of my workshops. That's where I lay out the step-by-step framework for how to accomplish amazing referral partnerships and leverage the influence of others in order to greatly shorten your sales cycle. And you can do that through participating in productive prospecting. And I'm going to share the link in the description of this particular recording so you have the opportunity to go check it out. And if you would like help with expanding and building amazing referral partnerships and making the most of all of your networking and referral prospecting, I'm here to help. I want to say thanks so much. Make sure you log in next week. Our conversation for episode 66 will be all about client appreciation events and making the most of your July. Because I know sometimes July can be a little rough because of vacations and everything else that's going on. But one of the interesting things about July, it used to be one of my slowest months because I fell into the trap of listening for someone else in my business that told me, oh, things are always slow in July, I don't even try anymore. And I thought things would always be slow for me, and they were. And then I woke up and realized, well, I wonder if that's really the truth or whether it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I decided that I was going to see what it would take to make July my best month ever. So I began focusing a lot of my attention and effort around serving my clients during the month of July and meeting them wherever they are and supporting them, either through connections or resources or offers, whatever it is. And that was my July. And it was pretty funny because it didn't take very long before July became my best month ever. So I'm going to talk to you about how to do that during next week's Business Unusual. And if you would like to join live, I'm including the registration link here. And then know that if you miss the registration, you can always hear it on the recording. And I also want to share, just like this recording is not live, the live conversation, we dive in to a lot of Q&A. There's a lot of interaction and collaboration. So if you're looking for opportunities to do some virtual networking, perhaps you need to join live and come and participate there because I'd love to meet you. All right. I'm going to wrap things up and say thank you so much for taking time with me and spending just a little bit of emotional equity of yourself listening to things that you may be a little bit better at or could be a little bit better at with your own networking and prospecting. All right, I'm going to wrap up. And remember, if you want, you can get anything you want in the world as long as you help enough other people get what they want. Have a great day, and I wish you good selling. Bye now.